What's up, Taiwan? I'm Eric Gao with news from here in Taiwan and around the world. President Tsai has championed her administration's efforts to protect the rights of Taiwan's indigenous groups. She was speaking on Tuesday to mark the country's Indigenous Peoples Day.
过去几年来，我们一起努力，面对了许多的困难的议题，不断的沟通协商，共同推进了许多重要的改革。
Tsai says the government has recently improved access to health care for indigenous groups and is working to address historical injustices. Taiwan's Indigenous Peoples Day marks the day in 1994 that the government officially recognized the country's indigenous groups. There are now 16 recognized groups, and they make up about 2.5% of the population. For over 40 years, Taiwan has stored nuclear waste on its outlying Orchid Island. As Rick Lau reports, this has spurred decades of protests from the local population.
When 50-year-old Sinan Jipengaya opened her bar on a quiet part of Taiwan's idyllic Orchid Island, she didn't just want to serve cocktails to the tourists drawn to the island's tropical beaches. She opened her bar with a message to her guests.
我的酒吧叫反河坝，那主要的目的呢，就是我们希望可以传播给不单单是当地人，我们也希望来的台湾人，甚至是其他国家的人都可以知道，我们正在努力这件事情。 我们是希望可以把核废料迁出去。
Jipengaya's island lies 60 kilometers off Taiwan's southeastern coast. Also known as Lanyu, it's home to less than 5,000 people. Most of them are indigenous Dawu, like Jipengaya. But this is also where the country stored discharge from its nuclear power stations on the main island. More than 100,000 barrels of radioactive nuclear waste are stored here on the southernmost tip of the island. It was placed here by the government 4 decades ago, without the consent or even the knowledge of the local population. It's pitted an indigenous minority on a small remote island prone to earthquakes and typhoons against the central government. And prompted decades of protests from locals over health risks from contamination. 4 years ago, authorities handed over more than $83 million in compensation, and promised another $7 million every 3 years while the waste remains there. The money has blunted widespread protests on Orchid Island, but some activists believe it hasn't solved the problems.
就对我们来讲，就会觉得现在很多癌症的发生，很多疾病的发生，就大家都归咎于整个核废料的问题，可是我们却不知道说到底是不是核废料的问题。
There are also growing concerns that as climate change prompts more extreme weather, the safety of the site could be at greater risk. On their website, Taiwan's state-owned electric company, which operates the storage facility, says it is secure enough to withstand earthquakes and typhoons, and that the waste has not impacted the health of locals. Nuclear power is still a contentious issue in Taiwan. Opposing candidates in the upcoming presidential elections disagree on whether to continue with the country's plan to go nuclear-free by 2025. But for people on Orchid Island, the lasting impact of the industry should not be laying at their door, regardless of how much compensation they are offered.
你们都领了，那干嘛还要反？所以我就会反问他说：“我们领啦。” 那个钱你要吗？如果你要，我给你核废料放你家，你要吗？
Orchid Island is riding a tourism boom. Hotels and bars are opening at an unprecedented rate. As visitors dive into the crystal waters next to the nuclear waste dump, swimming with tropical fish and sea turtles, many seem unaware of the uncertain future and unresolved issues facing the local population, caused by what's stored under the warehouses on the shore. Tsai and Rick Lau on Orchid Island for TaiwanPlus.
Flight attendants rallied outside Taiwan's government watchdog HQ to call for gender equality within the airline industry. Bing Wang was there.
On the back against expanded legal protections against sexual harassment in the workplace, Taiwanese flight attendants are calling for officials to take a deeper look at the airline industry. Flight attendants say men and women are treated differently by employers and are pushing for gender equality. One of the issues they're protesting is rules within the industry that say women must wear skirts and makeup. They say this is gender discrimination.
今天的诉求就是希望国家人权委员会可以做出，国际的航空公司如果让女性呢只能穿裙装上班的话，是一个性别歧视的行为。航空
The flight attendants union is also asking for higher wages and more days off. Many say they make a little more than minimum wage and that labor practices in the industry need improvement.
例如说，怀孕，然后或是育婴留停，其实都会影响到加薪以及升迁。那包含我们这些外观上的，可能需要穿着裙装啊，然后丝袜、高跟鞋，其实这些都非常不利于我们实务上在工作上面的安全。
The union says that inequality has led to harassment by passengers and employers. Taiwan is currently going through its biggest wave in the Me Too movement. Hundreds of people are speaking out against abuse, and it started a fierce debate across Taiwanese society. The flood of public response has made the government make swift action on these issues. Aside from expanding the definition of what sexual harassment is, they're also calling for harsher punishments against offenders. And that's what these workers are calling for today. Kaohsiung and Bing Wang in Taipei for TaiwanPlus.
Meanwhile, women in Taiwan earn less than 2/3 of what men do. That's according to the latest government figures. The statistics show the average income for men in 2021 was around $25,000 US. That's 37% more than the average income for women in that same year, which was about $16,000 US. These numbers are difficult to compare internationally because most countries measure the pay gap differently. But the Labor Ministry here says that the hourly wage gap is smaller in Taiwan than it is in the US, South Korea, and Japan. Taiwan has issued a nearly $20,000 US fine over a cargo ship that sank off its southern coast. The Palau flag ship, the Angel, was anchored off the port of Kaohsiung when it sank late last month. Officials were unable to recover the more than 13,000 shipping containers that were on board, and they couldn't stop the ship's 500 metric tons of fuel from leaking. Authorities say the ship's owner has not taken any measures to reduce pollution from the oil spill, and they haven't proposed a contingency plan either. The Coast Guard says if the company doesn't take steps by Wednesday, it will face further punishment. A building in Kaohsiung is raining tiles on the surrounding streets, forcing the city to set up safety nets. It's one of many buildings in Taiwan that have fallen into disrepair due to high maintenance costs. John Van Trieste reports.
In this corner of Kaohsiung City, Typhoon Doksuri has left a shower of tiles in its wake. Its winds have torn off much of the tile facade of this 28-year-old building. The authorities had to set up safety nets to protect passers-by. But residents can't just blame the typhoon. Tiles have been falling off this building for years.
有啊，平常会掉，就做这个吊网处理。可是还是会掉下来，所以之前有车子被砸到。
It's one of many in Taiwan with the damaged facade. Tile-faced buildings like this one are common across the country. In Taipei alone, the city government receives several hundred reports of fallen tiles per year. 2015 was a particularly dangerous year, with a falling marble slab killing one pedestrian and falling tiles injuring another in a 2-week span. Though the problem is widespread, arranging repairs can be tricky. 90% of a building's occupants have to agree to the repairs, and the high costs involved mean there are often holdouts. In the Kaohsiung building, some have balked at the estimated $11,000 US each apartment will have to pay.
差不多有32户还没有缴同意书出来，我们委员跟那个副主委啊，我们会努力赶快去收那几张同意书出来，这样就可以跟厂商签约。
The city warns that occupants will be legally responsible if their building's falling tiles injure passers-by. But as in many cases around Taiwan, this is a chance some residents are willing to take. Howard Zhang and John Van Trieste for TaiwanPlus.
Taiwan and Somaliland have signed their first bilateral deal, strengthening trade and business links. Taiwan's economics minister, Wang Meihua, says both sides have much to gain from this MOU, noting potential in Somaliland's fishing and mining industries. The new agreement was signed by Somaliland's Commerce Minister, Mohammed Hassan Saad, who was on a 5-day trip to Taiwan. European Union leader Ursula von der Leyen has pledged to strengthen maritime security cooperation with the Philippines. Von der Leyen says the EU would conduct threat assessments and help build up the Southeast Asian nation's Coast Guard. She spoke during a meeting with Philippine President Fernando Marcos Jr. in Manila on Monday. It's the latest move by a Western leader to strengthen relations with the Philippines in the face of China's growing influence in the South China Sea. Von der Leyen also drew a direct link between peace in the region and the EU's own security.
The European Union has been very supportive of a free and open Indo-Pacific, because an Indo-Pacific free of the threats of coercion is key to all our stability, to our peace, and to the prosperity of our people.
Florida Governor and U.S. presidential hopeful Ron DeSantis has said that he would aim to deter China from invading Taiwan if he became president. He made the comments during an interview with Fox News on Monday. Speaking to supporters later that same day, DeSantis said that he would also end China's preferential trade status and implement other economic restrictions. Though he didn't mention concrete policy plans, DeSantis underlined his stance on China, specifically in the technology sector.
We've developed a dangerous dependence on Chinese supply chains, and our companies have been exposed to a hostile security apparatus.
A group affiliated with ISIS has claimed responsibility for a deadly bombing in Pakistan. The group, known as ISIS-K, made the announcement on the Telegram app. It says the suicide bombing on Sunday was part of its war against democracy. Pakistani police say at least 54 people were killed in that blast, making it one of the deadliest attacks in the country in several months. The bombing comes amid a rise in violence in the part of Pakistan that borders Afghanistan. Fans of Western classical opera in East Asia don't need to travel to La Scala in Italy to get their fix. They can go to Thailand instead. Our reporter Joyce Tsai meets a Taiwan-born opera singer who's been coaching talent in Bangkok to become world-class vocalists.
Hearing this, you'd think you're in Vienna or Milan. But these singers are in fact in Bangkok, Thailand, at Heavenly Voice Nancy's studio, run by Taiwanese-born American vocalist Nancy Tsai Wei. She's been teaching classical voice for almost 30 years at one of Asia's premier music schools, Mahidol's College of Music, about an hour from Thailand's capital. Her students have gone on to perform in Austria, Japan, France, the US, and Italy, just to name a few places. Nancy was born and raised in Taiwan's central Nantou County, at a time she says when classical music wasn't super popular.
I grew up in central Taiwan, and during that time, it's in school, if you ask around, not many really study pursuing in classical music. I learned singing from my father. In the car, every driving trip, we was singing through from the first minute until we arrived at destination.
After completing her bachelor's and master's degrees in the US, Nancy moved to Thailand with her husband. That's where she found her calling, teaching classical voice.
This responsibility suddenly hit me. I have to do well. Many young singers are in my hand.
Nancy also came to realize that the Thai language actually gave her students a special advantage in learning classical Western opera.
The vowels can go above the letters, below, on the right, on the left. And so this interesting sound of Thai language make it very easy to teach German, French, Italian, English.
Nancy's protégés, like these university students, hope to perform on stages around the world one day, and perhaps even teach students of their own. And nothing would make Nancy prouder than to see her students achieving their dreams and sharing their heavenly voices. Alex Chen and Joyce Tsai in Bangkok for TaiwanPlus.
Thank you for watching What's Up Taiwan. Remember to download the TaiwanPlus app for more stories from Taiwan and around the world. Finally, enjoy these shots of dogs and their humans participating in a charity run in Venezuela's capital, Caracas. They're raising funds to support animal shelters. I'm Eric Gao. Take care and see you next time.